In this video, we're going to look at how to checkmate with a king and two bishops. I'm going to show you what I believe is the easiest way to do it. There might be a quicker way with table bases, but this will help you get it down, and then you can learn the shortcuts after that. All right, so here we got white to move. Check out the two bishops. They control a lot of squares when working together. So the first thing we want to do is get those two bishops next to each other, and I'm going to start with bishop to d2. So the bishop covers all of these squares, and the light bishop covers these diagonals. So what we really want to do is get the bishops next to each other. All right, so let's keep this king in the center. Now bishop to e2. So check this out. Bishop covers these squares and the other bishop covers these squares. So this is sort of like a box turned 45 degrees. You're completely shutting out the black king from approaching any of these squares down here on the first rank and kind of in the corners, A file, first rank, H file, first rank. You're keeping that black king up in the top of the board. So we're going to try to force the black king up to the 8th rank, and then from there we're going to force the king over to the corner. All right, so this black king is going to try to stay as close as possible to our bishops and towards the bottom of the board. So he wants to stay in the center or come down. All right, so now the next thing I like to do is look at which square the king gave up. And if we're able to put the bishops in front of each other to take away that square, that's what I recommend. If not, then I bring the king up. So in this case, the bishop would get captured. So let's go king to f2. All right, king to d4. Now in this case, we would like bishop to d3 because that would make these diagonals even a little bit tighter to keep forcing the black king back. But bishop to d3, the bishop gets captured. So again, I'm going to recommend the king. King up. So even though the king blocks this bishop, the black king is not going to be able to escape that direction. So not only do we have these diagonals covered, we now have this square also covered by our king. So that means that this black king has to go backwards. So we're making progress here already. Now let's give black the toughest move according to the table bases, king to e5. This is the square that the black king just gave up. Now we can use this bishop to go to e3. So see how we were on this diagonal, but now we just tightened up the available squares by moving to e3 onto this diagonal. All right, so now the black king can come back. And again, it cannot escape, right? We have all of this guarded. The king just gave up this square, but we need to get our bishops next to each other. So I think the simplest move here is bishop to d3. Keep these bishops next to each other. So look at again how they're guarding all of these squares. Now the black king can move here still to try to stay on the 5th rank. And here the black king gave up the d5 square. So now I recommend bishop to e4. A shortcut would be bishop to c4, but I'm showing you the easiest way to do it. So either the bishops are next to each other or one's in front of each other, right? We just keep switching. All right, so now the black king has to give up ground. Here was the square that the black king gave up. So now we have bishop to d4, right? So now the king has 2 squares on the 6th rank. Otherwise, he has to go to the 7th or 8th. Here, there's no bishop to d5, so we move our king up. And now we want bishop to e5, taking away the square the black king just came from. And now he must go backwards to the 7th rank. So now we go bishop to d5. Putting the bishops next to each other again. King to e7 and king up. All right, the king goes back to d7. Now this is where we put our king on the 6th rank. So what we're going to want is our king on the 6th rank, one of these squares, and the black king along these squares. So our king is going to keep the black king on the 8th rank, and then we use the bishops to keep guarding all of the squares that are available to the black king and push that king all the way over to the corner of the board. All right, so what move do we want here to push that king over? Let's start with king up. Now after king c8, we can go king e6, and look at these bishops. So I want to drive the king over to this corner because that's the side that our king is on. King d8, only move. The king just gave up this square. So now we're kind of on step 2. Step 1 was get the king to the 8th rank. Step 2 is bring it over to the corner. This is the square the king just came from, so we cut it off with this bishop. Now look at how the bishop guards here, this bishop guards here, and our king guards these 3 squares. That means the black king has to start going this way. Here's the square that it gave up. So now we go bishop c7. The black king has to move this way. Now it looks like he's close to escaping. And this is where we need to use our king. King to f6. And here you might be asking yourself, well, can the black king escape the other direction? Can it go over to e8? If king to e8, we can check. Check again. And after king to g8, we have king g6, and now we see there's only 2 moves for the king. So when the king moves here, all we have to do is make a waiting move with our bishops. It really can be any waiting move as long as the bishops are on these diagonals. And now when the king comes to g8, we see that this bishop guards here and our king guards these 3. So now it's a check followed by a checkmate. So the only other thing to look at is, could this king try to escape the other direction? So let's see, we had king here. It would actually be at this point. Okay, so what if king to g8? That king is trying to escape, right? The king really wants to get out. So now there's a couple ways to play this. I think the most straightforward is bishop to e4. So our bishop guards this square. And if the king comes back, now bishop to c6. And after king here, our king cuts it off, king back, and we go check, check, checkmate. So that's how I've learned the king and 2 bishops. That's how I teach all of my chess students. I think it's the easiest way to learn it. You just keep those bishops side by side, or one in front of the other. Use the king to help box out the opposing king, in this case the black king. And then once that king gets to the edge of the board, then what you do is you use your king on the 6th rank to cut off their king, and then the bishops will usher that opposing king over to the corner, and that's when you can finish off with the checkmate. So I hope that was pretty straightforward. This is a nice little endgame tutorial, how to checkmate with the king and 2 bishops. Let me know in the comments if you like the endgame tutorials, if you want to see more, or what other kind of endgames you want to see, and I'll add them to the list. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.